this time, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Page County School Board, August 24th, 2020. Roll call vote, please.
Dr. Painter? Here. Mr. Goodler? Mr. Goodler?
Here.
Mr. Lansbury?
Here.
Mr. Painter?
Here.
Mrs. Sullivan Smith? Here. Mr. Brimley?
Here.
All present.
Thank you. At this time, we'll observe a moment of silence. Thank you. I would ask everyone to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Do we have any agenda changes or additions?
No, we do not.
Thank you. At this time, we need a roll call vote to certify personnel matters discussed in closed session meeting, section 2.2-3711A1.
Dr. Painter? Yes. Mr. Goodler?
Yes.
Mr. Lansbury?
Yes.
Mr. Painter?
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Brimley?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. At this time, we'll move on to action items. We have claims for payment. Ms. Seacrest?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. You all have been provided with the the claims certification and the total operating fund of $223,322.58. Food service fund of $37,329.16 for a total expenditures of $260,651.74. Along with that, you've also been given the list of claims as well as the check register. If you all have any questions, I will do my best to answer them.
Are there any questions regarding the claims for payment? If not, call for approval. Sorry. Have a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the claims for payment as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Mr. Goodler? Mr. Goodler?
Yes.
Mr. Lansbury?
Yes.
Mr. Painter?
Yes.
Dr. Painter?
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Brimley?
Yes.
The motion passed.
Thank you. We also have Ms. Seacrest approval for purchase orders over $10,000.
Yes, board members, you've been provided with 3 purchase orders for over $10,000 for your approval. Again, if you have any questions, I will do my best to answer them.
No questions. We have a motion to approve purchase orders over $10,000.
I do have one question.
Pardon?
I have one question.
Okay.
The IXL learning, are you gonna provide that to the login information to all the kids regardless if they have a device available to them or not?
Yes. We've also purchased the workbooks that go along with the IXL, so we can make copies and
Okay.
send those home as part of our packets if students decide to go that route.
Awesome. That's it.
Other questions?
I make a motion that we approve all the purchase orders over $10,000.
Second. We have a motion and a second.
Mr. Lansbury?
Yes.
Mr. Painter?
Yes.
Dr. Painter?
Yes.
Mr. Goodler?
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Brennan.
Yes,
Motion passed.
thank you.
I have a question on the check registers.
On
The check registers that was listed, there was a bill to Johnston's Control for 30,000.
Yes, ma'am. So that's actually 6 invoices over the time period from 7/28 to August the 4th for the work that they performed on the chillers at Blue Ray High School and Page County High School.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. So that's 6 invoices that we paid there during this check run.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mhm.
We have a motion to take action on matters discussed in closed session.
I make a motion that we approve the transfers, appointments, resignations, and retirements from closed session.
That got it all?
Yeah, it's appointments, transfers, resignations.
And retirement.
We had everything. But that's fine, 7 times, that's fine.
Thank you. Second. We have a motion and a second.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Dr. Hunter.
Yes.
Mr. Goodler.
Yes.
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Brennan.
Yes,
Motion passed.
thank you. Moving on to informational items, Mr. Van Wyk with the code of conduct update.
Right. So, normally I would maybe wouldn't even come and just, approve it, but I was here on the 10th last time. And that was a Monday, and on Friday, the superintendent's memo that normally comes out in July came out, and I had work Friday, and I didn't see it, and I didn't see it Monday. So rather than just kind of schmooze it out, or whatever, the right thing to do is to bring it back with the legislative changes. And that's what you have. You actually have the SUPS memo online. You have it. And I just listed out exactly, for instance, number 1 was regarding, let me put my glasses on there. No glasses and a mask is making it a little bit rough. Oh, that needs to get all fogged up. Getting old. Okay. Suspended students are eligible to access and complete graded work. So that's a new House Bill 415 that was passed. Plus, I went online before that and looked at the webpage in the video aid for any legislation that was passed, but I don't before, just to make sure I had, whatever I did. But I don't think they update their webpage. So that's what it just came out with new information. So on page 36, under suspension, you'll find students are suspended students are able to access and complete graded work during and after suspension. Number 2 discusses alternative discipline practices, and that comes over to the next page on A. So what they wanted in the code of conduct was this. Some level, we've handled this in that appendix. Some level 4 behaviors require a report to the superintendent for a discipline superintendent's designee. However, new subsection, blah, 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 to this code section states that no principal shall report the incident to law enforcement if the parties complete the established alternative school discipline process. This legislation opens the door for school divisions to develop and implement restorative practices for mediation. And we already do that, but they want that in the code, and that's regardless of assault and battery. Number 3, House Bill 837. They basically define what dress and grooming code means, and any practice, policy, portion of the code of student conduct adopted by the school board that governs or restricts the entire appearance of grooming, including hairstyle of any enrolled student. And so that made it in there where dress code is on page 27, and also taken care of in the appendix. And House Bill at the bottom, number 4. And this is kind of a big thing. I mean, you ought to be aware of it, that any elementary student or secondary student is not guilty of disorderly conduct in a public place if disorderly conduct occurred on the property of an elementary or secondary school or school bus, an activity conducted by sponsored by elementary or secondary school. So that means they can't be charged with disorderly conduct. That's kind of a difference. And we haven't been discharging students with disorderly conduct normally, but they don't want, and that's again why it's taken into that new code of conduct for next year. but they don't want students that, to get charged with the disorderly conduct on school property if something happened on school property, period. So that's now the law. Number 5, and this kind of goes along with that a little bit. House Bill 257 eliminates the requirement that school principals report to law enforcement certain enumerated acts that may constitute a misdemeanor offense, as outlined in subsection A of 22.1-279. Number 3, 1, that could be a felony. Further, the principal shall also immediately report to the parents of any minor student a specific object of any enumerated clauses. Subsection A, to constitute criminal offenses as to whether the incident has been reported to local law enforcement. So if something might be a felony, you don't have to report it to the police, but we would normally report it to the police. So those are the legislative changes from the Stoops memo by the legislature that are in now the code of conduct along with all the revisions that we talked about last week. So, Mr. Green, maybe you could move this to action item, maybe, if everybody has any questions or anything. Then we'll have to kind of come back to you.
Is it the desire of the board to move this from an informational item to an action item? If so,
I make a motion that we move, the code of conduct update to a action item instead of an information.
Okay.
we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin.
Yes.
Mrs. Stolensby.
Yes.
Mr. Grayling.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you very much.
Is there a motion to approve the code of conduct? Is that what that, oh, okay.
That was just to get it done.
Pardon?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the additions, whatever, to
The code of conduct as
Thank you,
presented.
code of conduct.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the code of conduct as presented. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin.
Yes.
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mrs. Stolensby.
Yes.
Mr. Grayling.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Van White. Mr. Moran, policy updates.
Yes, sir. What I'm bringing before you is 4 VSBA policy updates. The last time I had information regarding VSBA policy was back in June. These 4 policies were addressed then. Since then, there's been some change in the language and even in some of the code. So I'll briefly go over these things because there's not a lot of changes, but still I want to touch on them a bit. The 2 that I'll start with are GBA and JFA. These reflect Title IX code changes. That's prohibition against harassment and retaliation, such as, and the changes are define the rules and responsibilities for the Title IX coordinators, investigators, and decision makers. Also for the process of complaints and the required trainings for all staff. And this is training we've already been completing here at Page State. The next policy I will touch upon is JM, which is restraint and seclusion. This will be what they're cleaning up on this is the procedures for the trainings, procedures for reporting, seclusion and restraint, and the procedures for use. Finally, policy KNAJ, and KNAJ deals with relations with law enforcement, and this change states that the memorandum of understanding with the school resource officer will address seclusion and restraint by law enforcement. Okay, so those are some changes. It's a long document, but these are changes to the policy that we had talked about back in June. Again, I can answer any questions in those regards if you have them.
Are there any questions for Mr. Moran regarding these policies updates? Thank you. Mr. Benson, Return to Learn survey updates.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. We have just about completed our Return to Learn survey, and I wanted to share those results with the board this evening. As you can see on the chart in front of you, that here in Page County, we have approximately 60% of families that chose the blended learning model, which would mean some face-to-face and some remote instruction, 60% at the elementary level. And then the middle school level is like 61.7%. Obviously, the high school is skewing that if you're on the secondary chart. So you see the percentage at the bottom says 23. That's because we've marked everybody in this with the formula to say high school went full remote. So truly, the better picture for you as the board is the middle school, and the middle school alone is 61.7%. So I think we can confidently say between 60 and 62% blended learning was the request of the community here in Page County. And then I guess on the flip side of that is, those that didn't choose that. One thing that I did want to make note of here this evening is our budgeted ADM, and that is 3214. And so far, we've been able to account for 3,063 of those students. So our building administrators are working hard to kind of figure out where those other 151 students are, that difference, because we know we don't want that influences state aid and money here as it flows in and out. So we kind of been working with them already to take a look at that. We do know we've lost some students, particularly at the elementary level, to other options this year, whether it be homeschooling or some sort of private school. So our elementary administrators are reaching out. You can also see on the right-hand side on this chart, we still are tracking just a few students that are kind of hanging out there. I will say last week we made calls, we went to homes, we did just about everything we could to try and track these families down and say, what is your plan? What are you thinking about? And there were just a few that we couldn't, we just never got in touch with. So we're continuing that. I would also add with the survey results, after folks have made their choice, we are still fielding questions with, okay, when we've selected our model, how is instruction going to work, particularly for the blended with some remote learning or the full remote learning. I think it's fair to say we have families that are looking for that information. How much communication will there be between the school? How will we get work and exchange materials? And we've been working hard to try to get another update out. So I think you'll see that here early this week to try and get that out. What does student participation look like in all these models? So we're continuing to get questions, but this is the data that we have thus far for you here as in regards to our Return to Learn survey.
Are there questions from the board members regarding the Return to Learn survey?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. When all this became known, I don't know how many, probably about 8 people on my end of the county were all excited about the plan that you all have chosen. And, they think, and the one thing I did say to them is, just remember, parents have to do their part. Everybody's got to work at this, so spread the word. When you're talking to other people, remind them, parents, you need to key into all this. I had one high school student parent, wasn't real happy, but they're going to the technical center 2 days a week, so they're, glad about that. And I explained to them at the look how that was going to work in the hot spots. And I said, you'll get all that information, but again, keep in touch, pay attention. We're all working together. So.
Yeah, so if you chose either model, we are saying here this evening that we would encourage families to come out to orientation. We're going to cover that. There's going to be topics that we're going to cover that are going to be for both learning models. So we really are encouraging families to come out. It's also an opportunity, if you chose that full remote learning, to meet that teacher for the first time and put a name and a face and begin those lines of communication that very first day. So we are still encouraging everyone to come out to our orientations.
And our administrators in the building administrators, principals, assistant principals, are they encouraged to go over with their teams, their grade levels, the information, the packets that are, I mean, this is new to teachers.
Yep.
And you want to get out the best product that you possibly can to send home to get a good first impression for the remote or the blended model. Are the administrators being encouraged to meet with these teams and see what people are planning on sending out and, you know, giving them some advice back and forth?
Yeah, so I would say yes to that question. The issue we're having is, you know, we just did training with our teachers last week. So as teachers sat through the training and started to ask some of those questions, and now what you're seeing this week is the development of those resources. So now you're starting to hopefully see it towards the later part of this week, some feedback from administrators as to the work that's being generated by teachers. I know I mentioned to Dr. Gonzalez today that we've had to purchase quite a few just tools and things for teachers to be able to do their job. Headsets and microphones and document cameras to be able to show and demonstrate things when they're putting those videos and those lessons together. So it's all happening simultaneously, probably, you know, not fast enough for anyone, but that's the name of the game. You're right, every teacher's a new teacher this year.
Well, and like Ms. Sullivan-Smoot said, people, you know, need to stay in tune, in touch. You also have to understand that this is new for teachers too. And hopefully, as we progress further along, we're going to get more polished, and you know that the quality will probably improve. Not that I'm anticipating that the quality that it's not going to be polished at the beginning, but I think as teachers get a firmer grasp of what's going on and what they need to present to students, I think that the products will probably, you know, improve as time goes on also. So everyone just needs to understand that it's not just learning by the students, but the teachers are also learning new tools.
I think it's important for the board to note also, we continue to kind of be thrown some curveballs by the VDOE. Our PE department had put out a plan for asynchronous instruction for that to occur for driver's ed education, meaning our driver's ed teachers were going to record the videos and put out the lessons just like everybody else. Last week, we got word from the VDOE that asynchronous driver's ed instruction is not allowable. So we are going to have to either be in a synchronous format or be bringing students in for in-person instruction. So we quickly changed, but that's how quickly things have to kind of, when I would use the word pivot, you know, you have to be able to be flexible and make those changes because, you know, as guidance comes from the VDOE as to what you can or can't do, we're reacting. And so I know when I mentioned our, return to learn plan, that there might be occasions where students would have to come to the building. And I think I used the example for a science lab. Well, we were throwing another curveball at the end of last week. Some students are going to have to come to the building for driver's ed instruction. And so we worked around that and kind of have a plan for that, but it's evolving every single day as we go forward.
And we appreciate that flexibility. Other questions?
Okay, I have a question just so I can make the money part look a little more hopeful. Okay, so your current enrollment, the 3,063, is that based off Power School right now?
No, that's how we are.
This is not taking the new response out of it, right?
Exactly. So
So,
we still know there's some students that we have to get a response one way or another from.
right, so it could be 3,155.
Could be,
Could be.
exactly. Yep.
Because if they went to Mount Carmel or one of the other private schools, you had to have already received their transfer request from Mount Carmel, right?
we hope so.
Requesting for records.
Yeah, we do still, when we reach out, we had as early as Friday last week, I'll just give that example, where we got in touch with somebody and they said, no, we selected this homeschooling program. So we may or may not have seen that.
Okay. Yeah, and I was wondering too, how many actual homeschool requests have you received that are?
That'll be the next thing for us to put together. I'll just tell you, Dr. Painter, when we started this, I mentioned to Dr. Gonzalez, we were at 233. When we put this out earlier last week and kind of shook the trees a little bit, got our administrators out there going to homes, making calls, trying cell phones. I mean, we were trying everything we can, reaching out on Facebook Messenger, trying to really get an answer. And we got it down to 151. And I will tell you, we're actually a little bit better than this. This was the data as of Friday. But we've got a few more responses as of today's data.
Because it's not as easy to just say you're gonna homeschool as people think it is.
Exactly.
I'm good.
Others? Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, we have citizen comment period. I don't, if you would like to read the one comment, and we'll see if anyone's here in person.
Gloria Nichols, 458 Princeville Road, Lorraine. I understand the temperature checks are going to be done before entering each classroom. I feel like the temperature checks also need to be done before kids, teachers, and everyone enter inside the school doors. Can this be set up outside the school doors to check them each day before entering the school building? That way, if there is a problem, they have not entered inside the school yet to expose the school and also other people. Thank you.
And normally we wouldn't comment on
That's just incorrect.
public comment, but that is the practices. They will be
Entering the
monitored upon entering the building at the beginning of the school day. So that is what the guidelines are. That's what will be done. We have no in-person citizen comments. So I will close citizen comment period and open board members discussion time. Anything that the board would like to address at this time?
I'd just like to remind board members about the webinars that are coming up, and there's one on Title IX, and that's similar to what, is that something that you all have the information? Would you recommend that we see that as well?
I would, very much so, yes.
Okay, so we'll look at that one. And then there's also one on mental health. So you would recommend that one?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I'm not suggesting that all board members have to, but if we can, and if we could set it up here, depending on the date and time and everything, we do that. And also, I found out you should have gotten my email, but the November conference that normally would be in Williamsburg, they're not going to send out the blackout sessions until the end of August. They're still hearing back from presenters and all that. But I think we should register for the conference and also for the pre-conference speakers. They got 3 really good ones. And again, we'll set that up as best we can for those, for us to be able to get in on that. So, okay, so.
And I've also registered for the legislative.
Say it again.
The legislative conference is the 24th of September.
Okay,
I went ahead and registered because it qualifies for mine,
right,
but I can do it here and everybody can attend it.
okay. Well, I'll get with you and we'll get the dates and all that. We'll send it out. Whoever can be here, be here. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there other comments? Go on.
I have one question. Parent asked, hotspots, when will that information go out as to where the hotspots are gonna be? Or maybe we don't know
We
yet.
don't know
We're
yet.
working on it.
We don't
Okay,
know
that's
yet.
all I need to know.
Yeah.
We're working on it. Okay,
Yeah, we don't know yet.
that's fine. We got,
We would encourage the board to take a look at Dr. Gonzalez's update that was from, that went out today. Mr. Samples and I attended a meeting last Friday or last week with the county, and there's some ideas being thrown out there as to how to help that.
just wanted to ask.
But there's no timeline attached.
No problem.
They are asking for us to come together and meet again this week, so, the date that the county gave us last week after some follow-up is they want to begin doing some construction type or building out of the wireless here in Page County by December.
I'll let them know that we're working on it.
Okay.
It'll be there in place by the time school gets. Thank you.
And according to that, it said that some of the devices, whatever it is, might be housed at school,
Yes.
at school
The
sites.
no's, yeah.
If they went with and I don't know the technical,
It's a no.
if they went with the, I guess they're like mini towers.
Yes.
Here to here.
Yep.
And some of that might be at the school.
Yes.
So the data that they gave us was, the town of Luray is the closest tower for like Rileyville area. That's 11 or 12 miles down the road. So they're trying to cut down that distance. And so they were looking for locations, and they asked the county if they owned any property. They don't. That would be closer to be able to send that signal out to those smaller towers. So that's where we worked with them to try to think about a spot at the school.
Thank you. Other items?
Yes, I have one. So the biggest comment I heard last meeting was about mental health. And that was particularly the high school students, but I'm sure there's mental health things going on all the time. So I sent the question, and if you could just expound on it a little bit so everybody can hear from you, the expert. Great.
So the phrase we've been using is take care of yourself, meaning take care of yourself as a teacher or as an individual so that you can take care of the kids. And so I think there's been, first and foremost, a pretty strong effort here to get back to when we've gotten back to school with our staff to try and do some things so that teachers can begin to take care of themselves. You've heard the expression, you can't pour from an empty cup. Okay, same sort of idea. You have to be able to teachers have to be able to be there for those kids in terms of that. So first and foremost, and then it's thinking about the alternative ways so that our teachers can be, or our counselors or whoever it may be, can have that relationship still with students. So we've put out some ideas as to how to have that type of collaboration in a remote learning environment for those that have chosen the full remote model. And then I think, as you referenced, we've tried to think about some other creative ways that those in-person meetings could still happen. Whether or not those meetings happen outdoors or whether or not we schedule specific appointments. We do want to make sure as we begin, having those sort of topics or those sometimes could be sensitive issues, we want to make sure our teachers are covered and our school counselors were covered. So we begin to develop some protocols to go to Mr. Grimley's point. We are somewhat building the airplane as we're flying along here a little bit, So that's a great issue. It's come up with our teachers and our school counselors and our community, but we want to make sure everybody's safe and when we have those sorts of things. So I think it's fair to say that Page County Public Schools is thinking about students' well-being first and foremost. I think we've demonstrated that in that this past summer, we met basic needs with our food delivery and those sorts of things, but it goes beyond that. And so we're still going to have our school counselors available for all those other things, those life events that come up. I was sharing with Dr. Gonzalez earlier this evening that career investigations and career exploration still has to be part of our programs. And so we want to make sure our school counselors play the role that they've traditionally played when those ideas, come to fruition. So I think we're starting to think outside the box. I could say here tonight, at the high school level, we probably got it sorted out a little bit better than the middle or high, or the middle or elementary, where we're still working on scheduling and some of those things. But some of the ideas that we're using at the high school level, I think, are going to be good ideas for the elementary or middle schools as well.
I appreciate you doing that.
Sure.
Very important.
Others. And I would ask board members, if you have an issue that you want information on or something that you think needs to be discussed at the board meeting, let me know that prior to the Wednesday before, so that when we get the agenda together, I can make sure that I include those issues that are of importance to community through the board members. So then that way we can get those kind of things on the agenda. We ask that agenda items be ready to present to our clerk on the Wednesday before the board meeting so that we can get all that stuff posted. So if we get everything in before that time, then we can get it on the agenda. So if you have items that you think we need more information on, let me know and we'll put it on the agenda and, have it presented. Now, that being said, we want to make sure that they are items that are of legitimate need for the board to have information on. So we want to make sure that, those types of things are informational items that deal with what the board needs to, information that the board needs to have in order to do our job or to get information out. And I think that the frequently asked questions has been good. People are, involved with that, and a lot of information is getting out that way. Again, I think once September 10th rolls around and the doors open, a lot of questions are going to be answered before then in the orientations, but a lot of questions are going to be answered on September 10th when those bodies are actually in the buildings or on the remote learning situations, and I think things are going to be clearer for people. But I would recommend that, citizens, if you have questions, continue to ask questions to the administrative team, to the building principals, and if you don't get an answer, let your board member know, and we will not give you an answer, but we will direct those questions accordingly. But I have a feeling if you ask a question to an administrator, you're going to get an answer in a timely fashion. So that's the direction we need to go. Anything else?
One item, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Just in the spirit of out-of-the-box thinking, I mentioned it a couple meetings ago. Perhaps school administrators consider using appropriate outdoor spaces for some classes. I know that's not really workable for certain types of classes, but there may be instances where this fall, when the weather is appropriate, and there may be a porch or there may be a place that students can meet with teachers, that they consider outdoor classes under a tent, under a portico, whatever. It's certainly not out of the realm when you read the pandemic.
Thank you, Mr. Gubler. And I think with some people that I've had conversations with that are in instructional people, that's part of the planning that they are considering as they go through with how they're going to do their face-to-face instruction. So I'm thinking that's a good use of our facilities and our grounds, and I'm pretty confident that people have thought about that in their planning. But thank you for bringing that up. Other issues? Hearing none, meeting adjourned.